The auditorium buzzed with a mix of excitement and anticipation, the air heavy with the scent of fresh flowers and polished wood. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, casting warm patches of light on the rows of eager faces. I sat on the edge of my seat, my fingers nervously tapping against the fabric of my dress, the vibrant blue a stark contrast to the swirling chaos in my mind. Today was supposed to be a celebration, a moment of pride for my son, but the weight of unspoken truths loomed over me like a dark cloud, ready to burst. As the principal called my son's name, a swell of emotion surged within me. I wanted to cheer, to scream out my love and pride, but the moment was shattered by an unexpected comment from him. "I want to thank my dad for always being there for me," he said, his voice echoing in the silence that followed. The audience responded with a mix of awkward laughter and polite applause, but I felt my heart drop. It was as if the air had been sucked out of the room, leaving behind a suffocating tension. I could feel the eyes of the crowd on me, their curiosity palpable as they sensed the shift in the atmosphere. My palms grew sweaty, and I wiped them on my dress, trying to regain my composure. What should have been a proud moment now felt like a precarious tightrope walk, each word my son spoke threatening to tip me over the edge into a chasm of unresolved feelings. I glanced at my mother, her expression unreadable, but I could feel the judgment radiating from her like heat from a fire. In that instant, I was transported back to my childhood, the echoes of my mother's stern voice warning me about the importance of family honor. Her ideals clashed with the reality I faced today. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that I had to enjoy this day for my son, yet the fear of the truth surfacing gnawed at my insides. Would this day end in celebration, or would it unravel the fragile threads that held our family together? The dinner table was set with mismatched plates, remnants of family gatherings past, each one a testament to moments both cherished and strained. As I sat down, the aroma of roasted chicken filled the air, mingling with the faint scent of lavender from the centerpiece my mother had insisted on. I could hear the clinking of silverware, punctuated by my mother Margaret's sharp voice as she directed everyone on how to serve themselves. Her gaze, a mix of pride and scrutiny, fell upon me, and I felt the familiar pang of frustration rising within. I glanced at my childhood photos hanging on the wall, capturing moments I wished I could revisit, simpler times when love felt unconditional. But now, as I faced my mother across the table, the tension was palpable, like a thick fog that suffocated any attempt at lightness. "You know, Ella, a family dinner should be a time for unity," she said, her tone dripping with expectation. I could sense David's eyes on me, silently urging me to keep the peace, but I felt the urge to rebel against the weight of her words. "Of course, Mom," I replied, my voice barely masking the sarcasm that threatened to spill out. The air between us crackled with unspoken words, and I could feel my heart racing, each beat a reminder of the confrontation I was dreading. I wanted to tell her how her controlling nature suffocated me, how her expectations felt like chains binding me to a past I was desperate to escape. But fear gripped me, a vice tightening around my chest. What if this dinner became the battleground for our unresolved conflicts? As we moved on to dessert, the tension escalated. Margaret's disapproving gaze lingered on my plate, as if my choices were a reflection of her parenting. I caught a glimpse of David's supportive smile, a beacon of comfort amidst the chaos, but even his presence couldn't quell the storm brewing inside me. "You could at least try to be more like your cousin," she said, her words sharp enough to cut through the sweetness of the pie. My fork clattered against the plate, the noise echoing in the charged atmosphere. The moment felt suspended, a prelude to the inevitable confrontation that loomed ahead. I swallowed hard, my throat dry, as memories of past arguments flooded my mind. The shame of disappointing her was a familiar ache, one I had tried to bury deep within, but tonight felt different. Tonight I sensed a flicker of resolve igniting within me. I couldn't keep avoiding the truth forever. I had to confront my mother, to lay bare the hurt that had long been festering between us. But what if I lost her in the process? The thought made my stomach churn, yet the need for honesty clawed at me, urging me to speak up. As the dinner wound down, I could feel the weight of my decision pressing upon me. The laughter around the table felt hollow, and I knew that soon I would have to shatter this facade of family unity. The time for confrontation was drawing near, and with it, the possibility of finally breaking free from the chains of silence that had bound us for so long. The air inside the family therapy room was charged with unspoken emotions, the muted tones of the walls echoing the tension that hung like a heavy fog. I sat on the edge of my chair, fingers nervously tracing the patterns on the upholstery, feeling the fabric's rough texture beneath my fingertips. David, sitting beside me, offered a reassuring squeeze of my hand, grounding me amidst the chaos of my racing thoughts. I could smell the faint scent of lavender from a diffuser in the corner, meant to promote calm, yet my heart raced with a mix of anger and determination. The therapist's voice droned on, attempting to steer the conversation, but my mind was elsewhere. I thought of my mother, Margaret, her disapproving gaze still fresh in my memory, the way she had looked at me during our last family dinner. It was a look that said I was a disappointment, that my choices were not only wrong but a betrayal of everything she stood for. I could still hear her words echoing in my mind, each syllable a jagged reminder of my childhood, where love was conditional and acceptance came with strings attached. "Ella, can you share what you're feeling right now?" the therapist asked, her eyes kind but probing. I hesitated, my pulse quickening. What could I say? That I felt trapped in a web of familial expectations, that the burden of my mother's honor was suffocating. My throat tightened as I fought back the urge to unleash the frustration I had bottled up for years. "I feel angry," I finally admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. The words hung in the air, a hesitant admission of my inner turmoil. David looked at me, his brow furrowing in concern, but I could see the support in his eyes, urging me to continue. "Angry that every time I try to be honest about who I am, it feels like I'm stepping on a landmine. I just want to be me without feeling like I'm betraying my family," I exclaimed, my voice rising with each word. I could feel the heat creeping up my neck, a mix of embarrassment and empowerment. "And what does being you look like, Ella?" the therapist pressed gently, her tone encouraging. I glanced at David, who now had a slight smile on his face, as if he understood the weight I was carrying. "It means speaking my truth, even if it hurts. It means not being afraid of what my mother thinks anymore," I said, my determination solidifying with each syllable. Memories of my childhood surged through me, moments of standing up to my mother in small ways, only to be met with her disappointment and disapproval. The therapist nodded, her expression thoughtful. "And how does that align with your desire to protect your family?" The question struck me like a bolt of lightning. Protecting my family had always been my priority, yet it was also what had kept me silent for far too long. I felt the weight of my mother's expectations pressing down on me, but beneath that weight, a spark of rebellion ignited. It's hard to protect them when I'm not being true to myself. I've spent years trying to keep the peace, but it's only led to resentment, I confessed, the truth spilling out like a long-held secret. David leaned closer, his presence a comforting anchor as I continued to unravel my tangled emotions. The therapist's gaze was steady, encouraging me to dig deeper. "If you could tell your mother one thing, what would it be?" I took a deep breath, envisioning my mother's face, the disappointment etched into her features. "I would tell her that I will not be reduced to a punchline in her story. I deserve to write my own narrative, even if it's messy and complicated," I declared, feeling a rush of adrenaline as the words left my lips. For a moment the room fell silent, the weight of my declaration hanging in the air. I could see David's smile widen, pride shining in his eyes, while I felt a mixture of fear and exhilaration coursing through me. This was my moment, my stand against the injustice I had endured for far too long. The therapist smiled gently, acknowledging my bravery. "That's a powerful statement, Ella. It's a step toward reclaiming your voice. How do you feel about that?" I took a moment to process her words, a sense of clarity washing over me. I felt lighter, as though a heavy burden had been lifted. "I feel determined. It's time to stop hiding and start living honestly, even if it means facing the backlash. I want to seek justice for the past wrongs, not just for myself but for my family too." As the session continued, I could sense a shift within me, the anger transforming into a resolute determination to confront the injustices I had tolerated for too long. I was ready to fight for my truth, ready to face whatever consequences lay ahead. With each passing moment, I realized that seeking justice was not just a personal quest. It was a chance to break free from the chains of silence that had bound my family. I could feel the path ahead of me becoming clearer, the fog of confusion lifting as I prepared to reclaim my narrative and confront the long-standing injustices that had festered in the shadows for far too long. The tension in the house had reached a breaking point. After the graduation ceremony, a heavy silence enveloped the living room where David and I sat, the air thick with unspoken words. The muted light from the overhead fixture cast long shadows, accentuating the lines of worry etched on David's brow. I could smell the faint remnants of cologne mixed with the lingering scent of the graduation cake, now only a memory of celebration. My heart raced as I glanced at him, desperate for some sign of understanding. "Ella, you need to talk to your mother about what happened today," he urged, his voice low but firm. I could see the concern in his eyes, the way his fingers fidgeted with the edge of his shirt, a physical manifestation of the anxiety that mirrored my own. "This can't go on any longer. Secrets don't just disappear. They fester." His words struck a chord, reverberating in my mind like a haunting melody. I remembered the look on my son's face when he made that innocent comment about his father, how it had pierced through the facade we had all maintained. "You don't understand, David," I replied, my voice wavering as I fought back the swell of emotions threatening to spill over. "My mother, she won't take it well. She never has. This is about so much more than just today's comments. It's about our history, our family's expectations. I can't just lay it all out there." I could feel the weight of my past pressing down on me, the memories of my mother's disapproval flooding my thoughts. But living a lie is tearing you apart, Ella, he countered, his frustration palpable. He leaned forward, his eyes locked onto mine, searching for a breakthrough. You're not just protecting her, you're suffocating yourself. And what about our son? What will he think when he finds out that the truth is something we've hidden for so long? Each word hit me like a punch to the gut. The thought of my son discovering the truth of the lies and the pain that had been buried for years sent a shiver down my spine. As I sat there, I could feel my resolve wavering. Memories of my mother's controlling nature flashed through my mind, her sharp words echoing in the recesses of my thoughts. I had spent my life trying to meet her expectations, bending and twisting myself into a shape that fit her ideals. But at what cost? In that moment, I realized that I was not just fighting for my own freedom. I was fighting for my son's right to know the truth about his family. I can't let her dictate my life any longer, I whispered, almost to myself. The realization washed over me like a wave, invigorating yet terrifying. I was tired of living in the shadows of my mother's expectations. The thought of confronting her sent a tremor through me, but I felt a flicker of determination ignite deep within. This was not just about me. It was about breaking the cycle of silence and shame that had plagued our family for generations. David's expression softened, and he reached across the table, his hand enveloping mine. I'll be right there with you, Ella. You don't have to face this alone. His support bolstered my courage, and I took a deep breath, envisioning the confrontation ahead. It was time to unearth the buried truths and let the light in, no matter how painful it might be. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but the prospect of liberation from my mother's grasp was enough to propel me forward. As we prepared for the family dinner later that evening, the weight of anticipation hung over us. I could feel my heart pounding against my chest, a steady reminder of the confrontation that lay ahead. I was ready to face my mother, to break the chains that had held me captive for far too long. It was time to confront the past and pave the way for a future built on honesty, not deception. In the quiet moments before our guests arrived, I reflected on what lay ahead. The path to honesty was fraught with challenges, but it was a journey I had to undertake for my sake and for my family's. With David by my side, I felt a surge of resolve. I would no longer be a prisoner of my mother's expectations. Tonight, I would reclaim my voice. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden hue over our backyard where the remnants of the graduation party lingered. I could still hear the faint echoes of laughter, but an unsettling silence now enveloped me, amplifying the weight of unresolved tensions. My fingers brushed against the rough texture of the picnic table, a reminder of the joyful chaos from the day before. I felt an urge to write, to pour my thoughts onto the pages of my journal, hoping to find clarity amid the swirling emotions. As I sat at the table, the smell of freshly mowed grass mingled with the lingering scent of cake, creating an odd juxtaposition of celebration and turmoil. I opened my journal, the pages crisp and inviting, yet filled with the sharp ink of my anxieties. Each word I wrote felt like a tentative step toward reconciliation, but the fear of failure loomed large. What if my attempts to mend things only dug the chasm deeper? Later that evening, David joined me outside, his presence a soothing balm against the turmoil in my heart. You know you can't force everything to be perfect, Ella, he said, his voice steady as he leaned against the table, arms crossed. I could sense his frustration, born from a desire to see me at peace. Sometimes you have to let things unfold naturally. His words resonated, yet I couldn't shake the feeling of urgency. But if I don't act now, I might lose them for good, David. I can't stand the thought of this family breaking apart. David sighed, running a hand through his hair. You're not responsible for everyone's happiness. You can't be the glue that holds it all together. A pang of guilt twisted in my stomach as I thought of Margaret's disapproving gaze from the day before. I had felt her disappointment like a physical blow, and the weight of her expectations bore down on me. I know, but I also know how much it means to me to try to at least reach out. It's just hard. In a moment of inspiration, I decided to host a family gathering, an informal dinner to bring everyone together. I envisioned laughter and shared stories erasing the tensions that had built up between us. As I planned the menu, excitement bubbled within me, but it was quickly shadowed by doubt. Would they even show up? Would it matter? The day of the dinner arrived and I prepared feverishly, the scent of roasted vegetables filling the kitchen. I arranged the dining table with care, placing the silverware just so, as if the arrangement could somehow mend our fractured relationships. But as the hour approached, my heart raced with uncertainty. What if my efforts to create a peaceful atmosphere only highlighted our differences? When the family began to arrive, the atmosphere was tense, conversations stilted as we navigated the emotional minefield. Margaret's disapproving glance met my hopeful smile, and I felt my heart sink. It was as if my desire for connection had been met with a brick wall. During dinner, I attempted to steer the conversation toward lighter topics, but the undercurrents of resentment were palpable. Every attempt at levity fell flat, and the silence that followed each awkward joke felt like a chasm widening between us. After dinner, I retreated to the kitchen, the warm glow of the oven contrasting sharply with the chill in the air. I leaned against the counter, my heart heavy with disappointment. I had hoped for laughter and connection, but instead, I had orchestrated a gathering that felt more like a funeral for our family ties. David entered, sensing my distress. "It's not over yet, Ella. You need to give them time," he encouraged, his hand resting gently on my shoulder. I glanced at him, wishing I could believe it. But deep down, I felt the weight of my failures pressing down on me. My attempts at peace had failed, and I was left wondering if I would ever find a way to bridge the gaps that had formed between us. Yet as I stood there, I realized I could not give up. I had to keep trying, even if it meant facing the harsh realities of our family dynamics. The road ahead was fraught with challenges, but I was determined to pave a path toward healing, one small step at a time. The auditorium buzzed with laughter and applause, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside me. The stage was decorated with vibrant banners celebrating my son's graduation, a moment meant for pride and joy, yet I could hardly breathe. As I scanned the audience, I caught sight of David, his supportive smile doing little to calm the whirlpool of emotions raging within me. The scent of fresh flowers mixed with the faint aroma of popcorn from the concession stand, creating an unsettling atmosphere that felt almost suffocating. Then it happened. My son stood to give his speech, voice steady but eyes darting nervously toward me. "I want to thank both my parents, but especially my dad, who taught me that honesty is the best policy, even when it hurts." His words hung in the air like a heavy fog, and the laughter that followed felt like nails on a chalkboard. My stomach churned, a visceral reaction to the unexpected spotlight now shining on our family's secrets. The audience's chuckles faded into an uncomfortable silence, tension crackling like static, and I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks as I glanced at David, who looked equally stunned. A memory flashed in my mind, my own graduation, my mother's critical gaze boring into me. I had promised myself I would never repeat that cycle, yet here I was, caught in the same web of familial expectations and unspoken truths. "What did you mean by that?" I whispered, panic creeping into my voice as I leaned toward David, who shifted uncomfortably. I wanted to scream, to demand an explanation from my son, but the words lodged in my throat like a stone. The gravity of the moment pressed down on me, leaving me both exposed and desperate. As the ceremony concluded, I felt a rush of adrenaline, my heart pounding fiercely against my ribcage. The world around me blurred, voices indistinct as I navigated through the throng of graduates and guests, each face a reminder of the facade I had been maintaining. I needed to confront my son, to unravel the truth that had been lurking in the shadows of our family. In the aftermath of the ceremony, I found myself in a dimly lit corner of the auditorium, hands trembling as I replayed my son's words. "I need to know what prompted that remark," I murmured to myself, the weight of my own silence suffocating. David approached cautiously, his brow furrowed with concern. "Ella, maybe we should talk to him together?" he suggested, his voice low and steady. I nodded, thoughts racing as I prepared for the confrontation. This was the turning point, the moment where I could either bury the truth deeper or face it head-on. I glanced at David, grateful for his presence, and steeled myself for what was to come. The path before me was fraught with uncertainty, but I knew that whatever lay ahead, I needed to confront the truth, for the sake of my son and my own peace of mind. The living room felt different as I settled into the worn leather armchair, its familiar scent of aged wood and faint lavender lingering in the air. Sunlight streamed through the sheer curtains, casting a warm glow that contrasted sharply with the coolness of my thoughts. I took a deep breath, feeling a mix of calm determination wash over me. This was my moment to strategize, to take control of the narrative that had spiraled out of my hands. "David, we need to talk about what happened at dinner," I said, my voice steady yet firm as I glanced at my partner, who sat across from me, his brow furrowed with concern. He nodded, his expression reflecting the weight of our shared burden. The remnants of the previous night's confrontation still echoed in the corners of my mind, but I was ready to confront the chaos that had ensued. "What are you thinking?" David asked, leaning forward, his hands clasped together, a gesture that spoke of his desire to support me. I could see the flicker of worry in his eyes, a reminder that he cared deeply about my well-being. "I need to address the issues with my mother, but it has to be done carefully. We can't let emotions dictate the outcome this time." I paused, gathering my thoughts, the tension in my stomach reminding me of how high the stakes were. I envisioned the conversation with Clara. The words would have to be precise, calculated. I recalled the moments of her disapproval and how they had shaped my decisions, the way her expectations loomed over every aspect of my life. I needed to confront her not just for myself, but for my son, who deserved to know the truth about our family dynamics. "What if we approach it from a place of understanding?" David suggested, his voice steady, offering a glimmer of hope amidst the storm brewing in my mind. I could see the sincerity in his eyes, and it gave me a moment of clarity. I would lay everything on the table, but I would also listen. I had to be prepared for her reactions, anger, guilt, perhaps even denial. As I mapped out the conversation in my head, I felt a surge of empowerment. I would not be reduced to a mere character in someone else's story any longer. This was my life, my family, and I would fight for the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it might be. I knew there would be consequences, but I was ready to face them head-on. Let's make a list of what we need to address, I urged, feeling the calm determination solidify within me. David nodded, pulling out his notebook, a small act of solidarity that made me feel less alone in this tumultuous journey. As he wrote, I reflected on the importance of this moment. It was not just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my voice and ensuring that our family could move forward, unburdened by secrets. The family dinner was set, yet the atmosphere crackled with an electric tension that felt suffocating. As I walked into the dining room, my heart raced, each beat echoing in my ears like a relentless drum. The long table was adorned with an extravagant spread, the aroma of roasted vegetables and savory meats unable to mask the bitterness of the unspoken words hanging in the air. The flickering candlelight cast shadows on the walls, illuminating the faces of my family, each one a mixture of anticipation and dread. I took a deep breath, the scent of herbs mixing with the faint hint of anxiety, and steeled myself for what was about to unfold. "Let's eat," my mother Margaret announced, her voice sharp enough to slice through the tension. I could feel her gaze on me, searching for a crack in my facade, a hint of weakness to exploit. I forced a smile, but inside I was a tempest of emotions, my thoughts spiraling as I tried to gather the courage to confront the truth. The clinking of cutlery against plates felt like a countdown, each sound a reminder of the impending confrontation. I glanced at David, who offered me a reassuring nod, his eyes silently urging me to speak up. As the meal progressed, my mind raced with memories of past grievances, moments of betrayal playing out in vivid detail. I recalled the countless times my mother's words had stung, each one a reminder of my perceived failures. The warmth of familial love had often felt conditional, and the thought of finally breaking free from this suffocating cycle filled me with both fear and resolve. I needed to voice my truth, to reclaim my narrative from the shadows that had loomed over me for too long. "I have something to say," I finally blurted out, my voice trembling yet firm. Silence enveloped the room, the air thick with anticipation. Margaret's eyes narrowed, her expression a mix of surprise and annoyance. "What is it, Ella?" she asked, her tone laced with skepticism. I could feel the weight of her disapproval pressing down on me, but I refused to back down. "It's about the secrets we've kept buried, the lies that have shaped our family," I continued, my heart pounding. "I can't pretend anymore. My silence was never consent to the pain and betrayal we've all endured." The words hung in the air like a heavy fog, and I could see the flicker of recognition in the other's eyes. "Are you really going to air our dirty laundry here?" Margaret scoffed, her voice dripping with disdain, but I pressed on, fueled by a surge of adrenaline. "Yes, I am. Because I refuse to let our family's honor be built on a foundation of lies any longer. This ends with me." The declaration erupted from my lips, a cathartic release that reverberated through the room. I felt a sense of empowerment washing over me, a momentary clarity that cut through the chaos. The atmosphere shifted, the tension palpable as my family absorbed my words. David reached for my hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze, while the rest of the family sat in stunned silence. The realization that I had finally broken free from the constraints of secrecy felt liberating, yet terrifying. I could see Margaret's expression morph from anger to disbelief, the walls she had built around her crumbling with each passing second. "How dare you?" she spat, her face flushed with rage. "I dare because I love this family and I want us to heal," I replied, my voice steady despite the tremor of fear that lingered in my chest. "But we can't heal until we confront the truth together." I felt a wave of relief wash over me as I realized that, no matter the outcome, I had taken the first step towards liberation. The weight of unspoken truths hung heavily in the air, and as my family processed my declaration, I could sense the beginning of a transformation. We were on the precipice of a reckoning, a moment that would change everything. In that charged silence, I knew we were at a crossroads, and no matter where this path led us, I had finally found my voice. I could see the flickers of understanding and anger battling in my family's eyes, but I was ready to face the storm that was about to break. This was the moment I had been waiting for, and I could only hope that it would lead us toward healing, even if it meant navigating the turbulent waters of our history together. The air was thick with a palpable tension, remnants of the emotional storm that had just passed through our family. I sat at the kitchen table, the familiar creaks of the wooden chairs echoing the uncertainty that lingered in the room. The soft glow of the afternoon sun filtered through the curtains, casting a warm light over the scattered remnants of our meal, a stark contrast to the heaviness in my heart. I could still hear the echoes of our confrontation, the harsh words that had been exchanged like daggers, and I felt a knot of regret tightening in my chest. As I looked around, the kitchen seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the next move in this delicate dance of reconciliation. Clara was busy wiping down the counters, her movements brisk yet distracted. I could see the subtle tension in her shoulders, a silent reminder that our journey toward understanding was just beginning. I wanted to reach out to bridge the gap that had widened between us, but the fear of missteps loomed large in my mind. "Mom, can we talk?" I finally ventured, my voice steady despite the apprehension that coursed through me. Clara paused, her hands stilling for a moment before she turned to face me. The expression on her face was a mixture of hope and apprehension. "I think we need to lay everything out on the table, no more hiding. I want to understand your pain, and I hope you can understand mine too," I continued, my heart racing as I spoke. She nodded slowly, and I could see the spark of willingness flicker in her eyes. "Okay, I'm willing to listen. But it's going to take time, Ella. I've been hurt, and it won't just vanish because we talk about it. We have to be patient with each other," she replied, her voice softer now, a hint of vulnerability breaking through. A wave of relief washed over me. This was the first step toward healing. I felt the weight of my past mistakes begin to lift slightly as we sat down, facing each other with open hearts. As we shared our fears and regrets, I was reminded of the love that had always bound us together, a connection that was worth fighting for. The walls that had once felt insurmountable began to crumble, and I could sense the beginnings of a renewed understanding forming between us. In that moment, I realized that healing wouldn't be a straight path. It would be filled with bumps and detours, but I was willing to navigate it alongside Clara. We were a family, bound not only by love but also by the scars we carried. I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of acceptance wash over me as I embraced the journey ahead, knowing that together, we could rebuild what had been broken and emerge stronger than before. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden hue across the room as I sat surrounded by my family, a sense of calm wrapping around us like a soft blanket. The laughter that filled the air felt genuine, a stark contrast to the tension that had once gripped our hearts. Memories of our recent struggles lingered, but they were now overshadowed by the bond we had begun to rebuild. I glanced at Clara, her face softened, a smile gracing her lips that reminded me of the love we had almost lost. It was a reminder that even in our darkest moments, hope could prevail. As I reflected on the journey we had taken, I felt a surge of gratitude for the lessons learned. The pain of my past actions had forged a path toward understanding and healing, and I knew that our family had emerged stronger from the storm. Each conversation, each moment of vulnerability had been a step toward reconnection, a testament to the resilience of our love. I could see it in the way Clara reached for my hand, her touch warm and reassuring, a bridge spanning the gap that had once felt insurmountable. In that moment, I realized that the journey to healing was ongoing, a commitment we would have to nurture daily. I wanted to inspire others to confront their truths, to understand that the path to reconciliation was not easy, but it was worth every struggle. I envisioned a world where families could openly share their burdens, where honesty and vulnerability were celebrated rather than feared. As I prepared to share my story with others, I felt a newfound sense of purpose ignite within me.